And welcome everyone. Could we stand for the pledge, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I would entertain a motion, please, to adopt the agenda as presented.
I will make a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. At this time, we have a call to the public. I haven't gotten nothing. Okay. So moving right along, item 6A, CVHS Student Council Report. Not sure who we have here. Was it Kimberly? Thank you. Thank you, Kimberly.
My name is Kimberly Garcia. I'm stepping in for our executive president. I am senior treasurer. And so far for homecoming, it went very smoothly. We made over a $5,000 profit. There was a lot of participation and there was a lot of enjoyment. The next event that Student Council is hosting is the blood drive on the 27th from 9 to 5. And we are getting kids who are 16 and older, family and staff to participate. 16 and 17-year-olds are going to need a permission slip to be able to donate. And our next up on the agenda that we have is the winter formal and candy cane sales. We're both working on those these upcoming weeks. And we have ordered our senior shirts and our student council shirts. We have taken a vote on not doing class shirts for everybody this year because the budget was going to be over $2,000, and we all agreed that they would only wear them once. A lot of them would be lost, and pretty much just a little waste of money. But we are going to be looking for other ways to give back to the school and the other grades. And so far, that is all I have.
Perfect. The blood drive is this month on the 27th?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Could you tell us where is it at so people will know?
It's going to be in the West Gym right
In the
here.
West Gym? Great, thank you very much. Any questions, anybody?
Thank
you. Thank you. Item 6B, the superintendent's report. Mr. Scholl, please.
In front of you, you have the superintendent's report for this month. Start off with enrollment. Good news with enrollment is right now we are up over 70 ADM compared to last year. I know Mr. Livingston actually created the budget based on 60 over last year, so we're exceeding the budget estimate, so that's a good thing. And what I found interesting, and we had Cindy and I had the conversation this morning, we haven't had this number of students in over 10 years. It was the 2010-11 school year was the highest. We had the highest enrollment now compared to that. Now we were at one time 2,600, and right now this is showing 2289. There was a time we were at 2,600, but we are going up, and so that's always a good thing.
Was that 2,600 ADM or seats in the school?
ADM,
Oh.
yes. Yeah, we were quite crowded. It seems like most of the growth is at the high school and Del Rio School, where territorial and heritage are just stable. So they are basically the same year to year. It's the high school and Del Rio where there's the growth. High school is good because it has a higher factor when it comes to the budget. So you get more money for a high school kid than you do for other students. So that's a good thing. But anyway, any questions on enrollment?
That's great.
That is great.
What we tend to see is by about now, and we are in day 25 or so, from now to the end of the calendar year, what happens is the high school enrollment goes down a little bit slowly, and the elementary, the K-8 enrollment goes up. It should stay around the same, but we'll do some high school kids and gain K-8 kids is how it tends to traditionally go. But that number should remain relatively stable. That is the difference between now and a month ago was we've hit our 10 days of enrollment. All the kids that were on the books that didn't show up are gone. And so this is a much more accurate number. These are kids that are real bodies that are actually in seats. So that's exciting. Law conference. Actually, Peter and I attended the law conference. There was also what was the
Political Agenda Assembly.
Oh, there we go. The assembly, the candidate assembly, I think is what or
Political Agenda.
okay, political agenda. Anyway, want to give Peter, if there's anything that you got from the law conference that you wanted to share, any nuggets?
How much time do you want? Oh, in all seriousness, it's the favorite event that I've gone to every year that I've been on the board, except for the first year. And for those of you who have not gone, I highly recommend you go at least once, because it basically is not only a series of technical presentations, and they're very open. I mean, you can ask the questions and all like that, but there are some standard presentations that happen every year, like a legislative update, where there are people talk about what's happening in the legislation that's impacted schools. There's also guest speakers, and we had a very dynamic retired judge the first day.
TV Judge Hatchett.
Yeah,
You know
Judge-
Hatchett.
She had a TV program, but she was a real Superior Court judge from Florida, from Georgia, and she was dancing. I mean, she's as good a presenter to keep you awake as I think I've ever heard. The next day was an attorney, and I thought his was kind of dry, so I won't go into that. But then you have your choice of sessions, and I made notes on the ones I went to, and I'm not going to take your time here to go over the sessions I went to, but John and I were just talking about perhaps the most outstanding part of the entire program was a showing of a movie. And the movie's title was The Bad Boys. And it was an incredible movie. It won the Sundance Festival 2 years ago.
Something like
award.
that, yeah.
So it's a semi-commercially made movie about this accommodation high school in the Mojave Desert. And it's one of those where the photographers go in and follow not only staff, but the students. And it's just heart-wrenching to follow not only the lives of the kids that are set there, but what the staff does with those kids. I'm not going to go on and on. I'm going to try. We've only been home a little bit. John says he's found it on the computer. I'm going to try to Google it so I can watch the rest of it, because they only showed the first half on Thursday and the second half late Friday afternoon, and I needed to get on the road because it was already bumper to bumper, so I didn't watch the second half. But the principal and the two movie producers came and presented their background story of how that was put together. And I will not bore you with it, but if anybody's interested, I'd be glad to chat with you, because it was probably one of the most singular experiences that I've ever watched in the way of educating kids that do not want to be educated. Let me put it that way. And how that staff worked with those kids is just beyond belief. The love and dedication and technology of how to deal with these issues that this staff put into working with those kids. So if you ever want to look at it, it's called The Bad Boys.
Bad Kids.
Bad Kids, excuse me.
Bad Kids.
What's
Bad
it
Kids.
on, John? Do you know?
I
and-
saw it on Peacock. I watched it on Peacock.
So that's enough for me.
Thank you.
Mike, did you want to share anything about the assembly?
Yeah, just a couple of items real quickly. It was enjoyable in that it's fun and exciting to watch a democratic process take place, like an assembly, 200 members there, all voting on and debating and discussing what turned out to be about 50 issues. Peter, I know how you feel about it. and
I've been there for that.
And so my reaction to that is that public school education is getting more and more complicated all of the time. And it seems, and that
all of these propositions, none of them were eliminated nor thrown out. No one at any point in time suggested that, so that at some level, each and every one of these is important because of sort of how things have become more complex. My first prime example of that is there's an entirely new category this year that added about 4 different propositions to it. School safety and security.
Not surprising.
Not surprising, exactly. Okay. The one before that's the 6th. Here's a category: require public accountability for taxpayer dollars spent on education. Now, that's become important because of card movement, voucher movement, ESA movement, the unaccountability of taxpayer money. So as things get more complex in our realm, I think there are going to be more and more oppositions to vote on. So at any rate.
All right, well, thank you.
Thank
you.
October board meeting, just a reminder that the October board meeting is on Wednesday, October 5th at the Paulden Community Center. So it's not going to be here. This is our annual meeting. It's the second time we've done it. And I'd like to keep doing it every year just to kind of, I know we don't have a whole lot of attendance. We don't have a whole lot of attendance here, but I think we need to make the outreach.
2 people showed up last year.
There we go.
Which is public more than, I would say.
So, I think it's something that we need to do. That's, Paulden's an important part of the district and we need to reach out to that community. So that is Wednesday, October 5th at the Paulden Community Center. Hopefully we have I know that we'll have some video coverage maybe. Thank you. The track is done. It adds so much to the whole stadium. Being in that stadium with that track finished, it's exciting to see it finished and done. I need to work with Mr. Metz in the high school. Maybe we can do an event this fall, kind of open it up and a ribbon cutting kind of thing. But it's exciting to see that it's done. It's a long time in the making. So that was good.
I went to a youth football game and got to see it.
Yeah.
But one of the best things that I saw when I was there was they had instructed the kids to walk on the sides, instead of walking right on the track with their cleats. And this mom, she yelled at a group of kids and she's like, "Hey, you walk on the side, you don't walk on the line. We paid a lot of money." I'm like, "I don't know who you are, but thank you." Thank you for stepping up and telling those kids not to walk on the track. It was so awesome because I don't know who she is, but she's a parent that appreciates that we got a new track.
Yeah.
So
Awesome.
That is awesome.
This Thursday, 1:00 is our board training. It has been posted, so the agenda's been posted for almost a month. It's going to be in this room, 1:00 on Thursday. Mr. Fogel, you have a quizzical look on your face. You have a question?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope.
And then also in this room on the 28th, which is a Wednesday at 6:00, the Chamber of Commerce is hosting a candidate forum. So my understanding is all 3 candidates will be there, have committed to being there. And the school district is just providing the location. This is actually a Chamber of Commerce event. We are providing the location that will also be streamed on our YouTube and Facebook pages, but it is a Chamber of Commerce event and they are doing all the organization and we are just supporting them however we can. There is a calendar of upcoming events. The couple I wanted to point out, and I think, Annie, you're signed up for the October 20th countywide meeting. That's in Sedona, just so you know.
Yep.
Okay. Then we also have for those that like to go to the December conference, that is December 14th, 15th, and 16th at the Biltmore is where it's usually at. I believe it's there again this year. I think the 14th is a Wednesday. That's usually like the pre-conference. So the main conference is the night of the 14th and then the 15th and 16th. So if you are interested, please let Karen know. and she can make sure, she has a reputation amongst some of the secretaries at the school districts that she's a magician when it comes to getting the rooms. Because some of the other school districts, as Peter and I know, could not get into the Camelback Inn. So we need to let her know, and she will do her magic. So please let her know if you're interested. Any questions on the superintendent's report?
Thank you. Item 6C1, financial reports. Mr. Livingston, please.
Yes. Madam President, and members of the board, administration, guests, and ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to just take a couple minutes and look at the report for the month ended August 31st. We're into our new year, and just as a way of explanation, a lot of the data that I'm going to summarize or visit, you'll see is in a transition. The actual ending cash in these funds is stuck in last year. It's in the 22 year, and we don't roll that into this year, just like rolling a bank account statement from one month to the next. We don't roll that until the annual financial reports are finished in the county. We're just about finished with ours. Last year, we rolled that October 5th of 2021. So I'll discuss funds and you'll say, well, we see there's expense, but there's not much cash, there's not much revenue. But for sure, the November report, the October 5th report, we might have it done, but for sure, November, you'll see a fund, it'll be beginning cash balance, current revenues, current expenditures equals an ending cash balance. And there, we're just waiting a little bit. The county doesn't like us to roll it until they close and balanced all our books. And I've closed and balanced all our books and the financial reports done. So that's where you're gonna see a couple reports that don't look really complete. So there's 4 reports I've given you: the budget summary, the cash fund balances, the cash flow, and then the cash balances. Big picture, revenue up to the end of August was 2.5 million. Expenses up to the end of August was 3.3. So that's big picture, all accounts in play there. Budget summary shows where we're at with encumbrances and balances of our $17 million M&O budget. Our capital budget is higher than it's been in a while, 2.6 million. And if we do need to lean on one or the other, those monies can go both ways. Take capital down and transfer back to M&O if needed, or the other way if needed. You go to the cash fund balances, the second report there, and these funds, if we don't have cash in those funds when we try to pay bills, the county doesn't like that at all. So these are really cash sensitive. They're not like our operating fund where they have state equalization and local property tax behind them. These are based on cash. So we have to be really careful with these funds. One is pretty close to complete, and that's the first one. That's our new classroom site fund that goes to certified teachers in the classroom. That's page 2, cash fund balances there. Starts with fund 010. And you see that 782,000 that we brought forward from last year. That's an actual number. The 321,000 revenue is an actual number. We do have encumbrances that we know we have, but they're not entered in yet. The ending budget balance, 999,000. That's been a very healthy fund and some significant increases there for teacher only. But the rest of those funds have to have beginning balances updated, and then they'll be completely active. Moving on to the cash flow, you see at the end of August, I'm giving you 2 new numbers. At the bottom of the revenues, you see the 2.5 million, 2,574,000, and then at the total expenditures, 3.3. To me, that's kind of relevant. It's really relevant when you get down the road a little ways and you say, well, what percentage of the year is gone? It's December. So we'll say half of the year is gone, 50%. But if 60% of the expense is out the door from your expense budget, that's a big concern because we want to kind of track the percentage of the year gone in most cases with the expense. And then revenue, we usually catch up our revenue as the year goes by, but there's 6 districts in the state that really got a problem with that. And the expenses are jumping ahead of the revenues. We want to stay within that. So I can also
And John, the difference of this is cash flow versus encumbrances. So that's why we have a different numbers than on the encumbrances, which are for the full year.
Yep, that's a good point.
Yeah.
And then with that classroom site fund, by the end of the September meeting, we will have a nice encumbrance there of probably 1.3 million teachers that are getting this payout. I believe it's 10,000 per teacher for the 110 teachers, so plus benefits, 1.3, 1.4 million.
For the whole year,
So that
10,000
will
for the
be-
whole year.
That will be encumbered for the September meeting, excuse me, for the October meeting with the September data. And then you look at the very last one there, the 3-page one that's got cash balances, all funds, and you see that's where you really notice the beginning balances are all zero. So that will be rectified as soon as possible, but it's not hard to do. But again, we want to be reconciled to the penny with the county, so they really like to hold our hand and make sure we do that. Any questions so far on the financial report? And I've got just a couple of things, just real quick to point out. If you look at Fund 691 on that last page report, you see that there's, in this case, Fund 691.
First from the bottom.
Yeah, that's the one that the state, the building renewal grant, that's the one we have our energy projects in and the HVAC. 3 projects were just finished. The Del Rio gym floor, the concrete polishing is done. The high school science and band room floor projects are done. Right there was $99,130. That's been paid to the vendor. The state's really helping us out with these building projects. I just got notice that if we can get a bid in right away, probably in the next week or 2, we will be in the running for some supplemental bleachers at HMS to replace the gym bleachers. What percentage of the gym do they take up? 25%, I think. We'll be able to push those right up against the wall.
Right, right.
They-
Oh.
if-
They don't go in now.
Yeah,
At
they-
the high school?
yeah, they
At
don't.
the middle
At
school.
the middle school.
Yeah.
Oh,
They come
yeah.
down,
Yeah.
but it meets the deficiency
But it's
definition.
broken.
To be safe and operable is the deficiency.
Yeah.
And they're below that, so there's a chance we could get those replaced by the school facilities board. So that's a project we're really looking at getting done as soon as possible. And that's really all I had. Any questions?
I have one comment that I want to make related to budget. You may be hearing in the news, or if you already have, about the aggregate expenditure limit. You know, this is something that we dealt with last January, if you recall.
Oh,
The numbers came out, and it's interesting what the numbers that we have now. The numbers have come out on how much that, with our current budget, how much we would have to give up. And I think we're gonna have to give up more than this. But they're saying that we will not be able to spend, we'll have the cash. We will not be able to spend $3.3 million, about 17% of our budget. This is 17% of our budget starting April 1st, which means that there's April and May. So we have 2 months left of a 10-month school year. So we won't have access. And I say it that way because we'll have the cash again, but we will not have access to spend 17% of our budget with 20% of the school year left. And so, you know, and most of our budget is salaries. And so, you know, hopefully you recognize that in order for us to accomplish that, we're going to have to close school starting April 1st. If the aggregate limit is not waived.
who sets these?
So this is done, this is actually in the Arizona Constitution, this calculation. And as you know, the state has been increasing funding for schools, but the calculation, which is from 1980, schools in 1980 looked a lot different than schools now. And so it's an outdated calculation. And so in order to change that calculation, it has to be referred to the people, a vote of, you know, like a proposition. So that hasn't happened. In order for it to be waived, it takes two-thirds of the legislature in each house, doesn't need the governor's signature to vote to waive this. That means if you think about it, we have 30 senators. It only takes 11 senators, 11 people to say no, and this doesn't happen for the entire state.
And that's
Only-
that's an annual waiver.
This is an annual waiver. That is done, so 11 people could vote to not do this, and it only impacts district schools, not charter schools.
So and it would impact basically every district school.
Every district school would have to cut 17% of their budget. And I say that, I need to correct it, would not have access to spend, because it's not gonna save money. This is, the cash is gonna stay in the, it doesn't save taxes. So, I know that Arizona school administrators I was a co-signer on a letter to, do a special session, coming up. I'm going down to the legislature to meet with some people on Wednesday to talk about this, on what can we do to get a special session in. I don't want to be till the end of January, and I think March 1st is the deadline that has to be done by. I think we were in February before this was decided last year, the waiver. And I don't want to get to that point again. Because people, it's a big waste of time, it's scrambling, and I think it's harmful to the system. But if you think about it, what would happen to Chino Valley if we did not give out $3.3 million in salaries?
In every other district.
Well, and that's just Chino Valley, right? We're talking about billions of dollars in the whole state.
Yeah.
But when we give out these salaries, what happens, that I've heard the number that it can turn over 7 times, because that money goes, and you said how many?
They estimate 9.
9 times.
It was the standard has been 7, but
Right.
9 times.
Someone gets paid, they go and buy stuff at Safeway, which pays an employee, which they buy stuff or they pay their rent, which goes to the landlord to pay their, so that money goes around, and that 3.3 becomes $30 million that is instantly taken out of the economy of just Chino Valley. And when we're talking about billions of dollars in the state, it's a financial nightmare. It's a financial nightmare. So I just want to put that on your radar. If you talk to people, if you have an opportunity, maybe mention something. I would try to get educated on this as a board member. Many of you are, just because we went through this last January. But if you have an opportunity to let people know, I ask you to do that, because it's horrible for our budget. It's something that we cannot get through. So. Didn't mean to bring everyone down, but any questions?
I believe the legislature will not let it happen, John.
Let's hope.
Until they
Oh, no,
do.
they drug it out till how long last year?
Was that, I think, a week early, wasn't it, like the last week in February, I believe?
The last time I could introduce new bills.
Yeah.
Yeah, it causes a lot of uncertainty that is damaging to many parts of the community.
John, is there anything underway to get the constitutional amendment started to get rid of this?
The easiest way is for the legislature to send and it's not a referral, but what would be the term that, is it a referendum? Or there's something that,
Referendum to the public.
right,
Yeah, okay.
but there's a different name for it.
Legislative initiative.
Thank you. Initiative was the term that I was thinking of.
Right.
Referendum is like what they're doing with the ESAs, the vouchers. So it's a legislative initiative that the legislature can do. My understanding is with a simple majority, they can take it to the people with the initiative with a simple majority. That didn't happen. So I think the focus right now is trying to get the special session to at least do the waiver.
Get this year taken care of.
Yes. Yeah. So. Anyway,
Yeah.
that's more budget news.
Thank you. Item 6C2, Student Activity Fund Report, Mr. Living, please.
Sure, there are 2 items of interest and that are perhaps a little bit unusual. Because boys and girls soccer both won state titles last year, they ordered some rings. If you look on that student report, you see that the rings are in the encumbrance section. They've been ordered before school ended. My understanding is they will be here at hopefully a home football game to be presented to students at a home football game. But those are, other than those two purchases that are waiting to be received and paid, everything's pretty standard for this time of year.
Any questions?
I have a question. Is the cards that they sold, is that put into this already or not yet?
Who did that fundraiser, Miss Wolf?
card would
card.
goes into different athletic accounts and also, so if a team sells this many cards, it goes to their team.
So,
But that's not what's happening with this. I mean,
So those probably go to auxiliary, probably not into the
Yeah,
student
right,
activity.
yeah.
So we keep those in the district.
okay,
These are kept in a separate account that
Yeah.
the district really, where we take care of them, we're custodians, but
Yeah.
there's an actual, like a different fund 525 is where we see
Right,
those
yeah.
other ones. So I can give you an update on those sales
That's
next time.
that's okay.
Thank you. Item 7A through P, the consent agenda, would entertain a motion.
I will make a motion for the approval of the consent agenda.
Second, please.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. Item 8A, resignation of a certified employee. Mr. Scholl, please.
So this is an item that we need to be kind of, you have the information in front of you. If you would like any more specific information, we really should go into an executive session if you want specifics about this. Basically, we have an employee that's under contract that resigned without our permission. And what we are asking for is for you to reject the resignation. And then that's the process to report the employee to the Department of Education for not fulfilling his contract.
Yeah, I have an issue with this.
Okay?
I have an issue with this because of his reason for leaving. From my understanding, the reason why he's leaving is because he cannot afford to live here.
He's not moving. My understanding is he's not moving out of the area. He's taking another government job where he has to pay retirement, and we think for about the same amount.
It's another local job.
Yes, so he's not leaving the area.
Here, I don't know how I feel about this just because I've been given different information and I know that a lot of students really, really liked this teacher. And a lot of people, including some people that I know, a lot of children were really upset that he was leaving. And I just feel with our teacher salaries and stuff, I don't know the whole story. So I don't think that it's fair for us to deny his resignation without knowing exactly, I mean.
We can go into executive session if you'd like to know more information.
I
So,
mean, I kind of feel like I kind of feel like that would be the right thing to do. Just because if somebody is leaving our district because they can't financially afford to live here, which everybody knows this is a tough place to live anyways, I would like to know the true facts of why he's leaving.
mhm.
And I'm apologizing because I know that takes our time, but I just feel like it would be the right thing to do.
So we need, so we need a motion to go into executive session?
We can go and meet in my office, and then we have to just put on hold the video, which is, I just want you to know the process so that Lawrence is aware. While we're in executive session, we won't kick everyone out. We would just go somewhere else, meet, and then come back. So,
Do you know the exact truth?
well, I would ask Mrs. Wolf to be there because she's the one that had the interaction with him.
Any more discussion? We want to go into executive session then? You don't?
I don't feel the need to.
Do we need to vote?
Well, there hasn't been a motion. There hasn't been a motion,
Oh, there
so
has not been a
There-
motion.
if,
Andy, you make a motion, then you need to call for it. But then we call for a second. If there's no second, then the motion dies.
Okay, well, I'll make a motion to go into executive session to discuss this further, so the proper thing is done.
Second? Sorry, no.
The motion fails on the lack of a second.
Now we're back to the discussion of the item.
Okay. Back to discussion.
I'm in favor, I'll speak up on the motion
Okay,
then.
well,
Even though we haven't had a motion on the
yeah,
floor
we
yet.
don't.
But we seem to do it sort of in reverse. So I'm in favor of the recommendation that the administration has given on this issue.
I'm not.
Is that in the form of a motion? Are you making a motion?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, so I'll make the motion then, yeah.
And I think with the motion,
So-
you need to include his name as part of the motion.
We can just read the action required,
Requested, yeah.
yeah.
requested.
Why doesn't somebody else do it? I don't have it up yet on my
Okay,
computer.
I'll
I'm still
go ahead and
scrolling
do it
down.
then.
to that.
I'll make the
Okay.
motion.
Thank you.
Yeah, I move that we reject the resignation of Nathaniel Rowe and refer Mr. Rowe to the Arizona Department of Education for breaching his employment contract in violation of ARS 15-545.
I'll second that.
Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes.
Oh, so you ask for opposed.
Oh, any
Right.
opposed? I'm sorry.
Yeah, me.
I need to
Right.
Thank you.
Notify.
That's
Okay,
all right
Itemize.
now.
Item 8B, 100-day in-person reimbursement grant program, Mr. Scholl.
So because the district for a period of time it was the school year 2021. We were 100 days in session. That's not, let me back up. We had students on campus for at least 80 days because we're on a 4-day week. It's a 100-day grant for the 4-day week. School districts, it's only 80 days that you have to be. Because we had students on campus during the 2020-2021 school year for at least 80 days, the governor gave out money to school districts that met that requirement. What that money could be used for, there was a pretty specific list, and one of it was basically retention bonuses or pay to employees. So using dates that were in the grant documents, it was decided that for those employees that were employed between March 3rd of 21 and November 9th of 22, so that still means that we're still 2 months out. So the employees that were that were employees employed by us continuously for that time frame, the grant money would be split amongst those employees. Every employee that is eligible gets the same amount no matter what their job classification. Turns out there are about, it says in here, what's the number? Cindy, do you recall what the number was? 181. 181 employees that qualify that were here continuously. There's at least one, maybe two that we have resignations for or one was taken off already. We may have another one that we received a resignation for today that's not on your list that we may take off the list ultimately. But this is the list that's in here are all those employees that were employed between March 3rd, 21 and currently.
And they have to be through November 3rd. So
Oh, the pay is November 9th and it's through November 3rd. And the special pay is November 9th.
Certified and classified.
It's everybody in the district that is here. We do have at least one employee that's on ESI that's also included. But yeah, it's everybody, no matter what their classification, no matter what they do, everyone's going to get the same amount. Works out to be about $1,200.
That's nice.
I'm happy to hear that.
And we timed it so that it comes out in November and people can use it for holiday stuff, that kind of thing.
Any questions?
I do want to thank Cindy for taking the lead on getting the names out, and the principals for making sure that we don't want to miss anybody. That was the kind of the key that we wanted to make sure that everyone that was here during the roughest times, and continued with us, was on that list. We didn't want to miss one person.
Like COVID combat pay.
Right.
I think it's really great.
It is.
We're ready for a motion.
Yeah, this is an action item, so
I'll
yes.
make a motion for the approval of distribution of 100-day in-person reimbursement grant program funds to employees employed from March 3rd, 2021 through November 3rd, 2022.
Have a second, please?
Second.
Any more discussion? All in favor?
All right.
Aye. Thank you. Item 8C, revised counselor salary schedule.
So when we revised the salary schedule for all our classified and certified employees, last spring, we did not do counselors. We have a brand new counselor that we need to put on there that we hired recently. And so this is just an update from just revising the salary schedule like we did with the other salary schedules.
All right, any questions? Motion, please.
I'll make a motion for the approval of counselor salary schedule.
Second,
Second.
discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, item 8D, transportation administrative assistant position change, Mr. Scholl again.
So prior to about 3 years ago, our administrative assistant could not drive a bus in transportation. And so they did not have their CDL. When there's been some changes in the department. And so in the past, our director actually drove buses when they had to. Now our director can't drive a bus, so our administrative assistant can. So we kind of swapped those jobs, right? And the thing is, when we have somebody that does that job, they're really a half-time bus driver, half-time administrative assistant. Bus drivers actually make more than administrative assistants on an hourly rate. So this is just an adjustment to compensate for the time that they're actually driving a bus and versus the time that they're an administrative assistant. It's a blended rate. So it's not, they don't clock in as they drive the bus and then clock in when they're doing admin assistant stuff, because that's just too cumbersome. It's a blended rate between the two, but they really are doing two jobs. And we're structuring it to what is actually going on in that position.
John, does this apply where you've been just to one person?
One person, we only have one administrative assistant in transportation.
That makes it much more clear.
Yeah.
Any questions? No. Motion, please.
I'll make a motion to change the transportation administrative assistant from 0 FTE position to 0.5 FTE and add 0.5 FTE bus driver position.
Second,
Second.
discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. All right. Item 8E, increase preschool paraprofessional hours. This is Randy.
Oh,
You
hello.
changed.
Yes, I did. Here's a little different now. So we have a current position that's 4 hours for a paraprofessional in working with the special needs preschool students. And we have had 2 high needs students who have preschool severe delays that have come to our preschool. And they need a lot of assistance. So what we would like to do is increase that 4-hour position to 8.5-hour position, so 4.5 hours, to increase it to a full-time position. When I say full-time, that's the 8.5 hours is what we always hire a full-time position for parapros at that school. So anyway, and the reason is we would like to make sure that these kids are safe. They need supervision, and we have the paraprofessional attending part of the day, but those kids are in the second part of the day. And even if they were in the first part of the day, we would still need additional staffing to help them for safety and to follow their IEP. So I would just like to please request that we increase the hours to that position so that we can make sure the babies are safe.
Any questions? Any motion?
All right, I'll make a motion for the approval of 4.5 additional hours for preschool paraprofessionals at.
Second, please.
And I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you. Item 8F, personnel report.
There is a supplement, so please refer to the supplement as well. We have 2 new certified staff, 6 new classified, 4 new classified subs, 6 new resignations, 1 retirement, 2 certified changes, 7 classified changes, 1 coach, 3 extra duty contracts, and a slew of timesheets.
Any questions?
I'll make a motion for the approval of the personnel report
And
and the supplement.
thank you.
Yes, thank you.
And I'll second.
Second, and any discussion? All in favor? Aye, thank you. Okay. Item 9A, authorization for a RFP for build design of Teacher Reach.
All right.
Is that name in the dictionary?
Teacherage. Have you heard of parsonage before? It's related, it's like parsonage. Uh-huh. Teacherage, it's actually, it's actual word.
Wow.
Was it Vale was on the first did those?
Oh, it's been for many years up on the reservation. They've had teacher housing for decades. So it's nothing new. So what we're asking for is the authority to issue a request for proposal for a design build project of teacher housing, basically is what teacherage is. And this would be behind Del Rio School on district-owned property. I kind of gave you a little map to show you where things would be. And it's directly behind the current football field at Del Rio School. We have water close. We'd have to extend, our staff could extend water to the property line. Electric runs along the north side of 2 North. We have, it would be septic system. And to be honest, I don't have, I am looking, my goal but I'd like to see is for contractors, developers to be, come up with some creativity on how they accomplish this. It could be tiny homes, it could be duplexes, it could be multi-story, it could be whatever. We have reached out to the town prior, so there's also a memo from the town on some requirements that we would have to follow. We are not subject to zoning, the district is not. So it's not a zoning issue, but there's some setbacks and how close the driveways are and some fire regulations. There'd have to be a fire lane that meets their CAPMA specifications. So there's still some requirements. It's not carte blanche.
And parking, as we know.
And parking, there'd be parking available.
John and I had a discussion of that in Phoenix.
So, it's not a carte blanche. Now we've spoken to a couple developers that may be interested in this. We're gonna also make sure it gets out to the Contractors Association because we want to, and then it also has to go into the newspaper. So it would be that going out there. We are hopeful that, and I know Mr. Fogel was there. Mr. Carter was talking about a potential grant, a matching grant, where money from the ADE flowing through the county schools office could match potentially up to $500,000. So it could be we put in 500,000 and the county schools office puts in $500,000. And then we're anticipating between $1 million and $1.5 million is the cost of this. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I talked a little bit about the location, the project size, the infrastructure. Again, it could be any kind of housing unit. We're looking for creativity. The time frame is in speaking with Mr. Carter or hearing from Mr. Carter. It looks like we would have a 12-month time frame that this would have to be done in once the project is accepted. So the process would be there's going to be a committee once the money is awarded. There will be a committee made up by the county schools office of contractors and other people that specialize in building. Projects would have to be submitted to this committee for approval, and then the committee would decide whether the money should be awarded for that project.
I think it's a really great idea.
Up to 10 units, I see.
I'm thinking that up to 10,
Yeah.
you'd like to be between 5 and 10 units. There would be, obviously, it would be some revenue generated through rents, but it would be a rent that is less than what they would have to do in the district. And this would just be basically a way to attract teachers into the district and to retain teachers as well.
We're all school employees.
Well, I think that we would focus on teachers first, and then if we can't rent it, then it could be other employees. I can tell you that there's projects in the works in Prescott. They're working on something. There is something in the works through Yavapai College. I know that CAFMA is very interested in this. The city of Prescott is interested for their police and fire. And it's just, and really, this is not an affordable housing project, because that has connotations of low income. This is a workforce housing, fire, police, teachers, nurses, people that, are working typically in government jobs, but that kind of make, are part of the part of what makes a community happen. And so we are not the only ones thinking this and pursuing this. My understanding is there was $3 million that was going to potentially go to the county schools office to give out grants. And we would just be, the maximum eligibility would be 500,000, but that could be 6 projects of 500,000. At least it could be many more projects if it was less than 500,000. And so every county, every school district in the county would be eligible for that money. I heard someone say, and I don't know for sure, but someone was telling me we may be the furthest along towards this end.
Well, so everybody understands what John's talking about is not just the houses, it's the full infrastructure, the utilities, the roads, the power, and the homes themselves. So this is a package that he's talking about. So we wouldn't have to come back and get something done and try to again get more money for the rest of it.
We were talking initially about trying to contract it out piecemeal and, go with maybe like an architect or an engineer. And we just decided, let's get somebody to come in and just do the whole thing design build. I think it's going to be cheaper ultimately, less time consuming on our part, and
Easier to oversee and manage it.
absolutely.
So it's a super idea.
Definitely, like it. I will make a motion. Does anybody else have anything they wanna
Do we have any questions?
I do want to say, I did get one phone call, one gentleman, because this hit the paper a month or so ago, didn't think that government entities, including school districts, should not be in the housing business. And I understand that, but when our staff cannot live in the community in which we want to hire them, or not even in our community, in the area, we've got to take, steps to get the job done. And this is one of the steps to get the job done.
And it's the world today. We're not unique in this problem.
No.
Annie, you wanna?
I'll make a motion to approve authorization for RFP to design build teacherage housing on district property.
Second?
And I will second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Item 10A, request for open enrollment waiver. Mr. Scholl.
So a while back, you guys approved the open enrollment limits. And most of our grades are closed because our classes are filled to the limit. We've had 2 requests. The first one is from a family that lives a mile from our boundary. They have 4 children. 2 of the grades that they want to enroll their children are open and 2 are closed. So this is just a request by the family to get, see if the board would be willing to authorize a waiver for this particular family that, lives close to the boundary, has kids that they could put in our district, half their kids they could, half their kids they're asking for a waiver.
Say absolutely.
Can they be bused?
They will not be bused because where they live, there is no bus. So the father is committed to driving them in.
They have no problem taking kids.
Right.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see that. Any questions? Mr. Fogel, would you have any questions or concerns?
What's our history of requests like this?
So in the past, we've typically approved them. So a couple things. When it's a kid that could enroll and another kid that couldn't, we typically approve those. The policy says that if you have a child that was enrolled last year and is open enrollment and comes this year, their sibling could come automatically. They are not subject to open enrollment. So Historically, it has been approved in similar situations.
So historically, have there been a lot of requests on an annual basis like this?
Less than a handful, 1 to 2.
And it says that in both of the principals approve it too.
Yes,
correct?
I've consulted both the principals in both cases.
Someone like to make a
I'll
motion?
make a motion to approve the open enrollment waiver for 4 children, grades K1, 6, and 8.
Second?
But Mike second as well.
I'll second it.
Yeah. Any further discussion or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Item 10B, request for open enrollment waiver number 2.
This one's a little more interesting. This family lives over on Williamson Valley, probably 2 miles this direction, and is less than a quarter mile from our district boundary. And they are in the Prescott Unified School District boundaries. They are actually closer by distance, by road distance to our schools than they are to PUSD. And so everything else, same situation. They have 2 kids. High school is open, 8th grade is not. They're asking for the 8th grader to be waived, the open enrollment being waived. And again, they are actually closer to our schools than they are to the district schools in which they reside.
That's kind of just crazy to me.
I looked up this personally. It was requested you go to the GIS, you can figure out really easily where they live and yeah, it's very close.
Okay, questions?
Nope.
Motion?
I'll make a motion to approve open enrollment waiver for a child's grade 8.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Item 10C, social studies materials pilot and materials preview. Ms. Daniels.
Okey dokey. So, regarding social studies, the 2 schools, Territorial and Del Rio, would like to preview social studies materials and pilot them, 2 teachers per grade level for the next 60 days or so. And we have all the materials currently out in the hallway. We are putting the materials on review now rather than waiting until they choose a series. This is a little bit different than what we've done in the past. In the past, we've had 2 different, 2 different things for people to choose from. However, Mrs. Reeder and I, she's kind of an expert on K-5 curriculum, so we're lucky that way. We sat with every vendor with some very extensive presentations. There are only 3 vendors now, really, anyway, because textbook companies have swallowed up each other, and we're down to about 3 anyway. One of them, it was a definite no-go. They were ill-equipped. Most of their textbooks are sold in states other than Arizona. They have very few Arizona districts. They're not very tightly aligned with Arizona standards, so that one was an easy eliminate. The other textbook, all things being equal, the 2 vendors were actually quite similar, very subtle differences between the 2. But currently we use McGraw-Hill for math and language arts K-8. And because of that, we have an electronic platform that we use a single sign-on for. Students are very comfortable with it. Teachers are comfortable with it. They know how to navigate the platform. The 2 textbooks being fairly equal, I went and talked to principals, talked to instructional coaches, and the feeling was, we don't want to learn a different platform. It's too confusing. We trust your judgment on the quality of the books. We'll try them out for ourselves. If we think they absolutely aren't worth it, then we would ask to look at the other one. But we think for the kids, it's too hard to learn, and the platforms are quite different from one another electronically. So we're recommending piloting McGraw-Hill materials to stay consistent with the vendor. The social studies series is called Impact. They're on display. We'd start the clock ticking on the 60-day review. We'd actually far exceed that before we would even come back to the board with a recommendation or to tell you we're going to look at something else. Some of the subtle nuances are Arizona made a shift about 2 years ago in social studies standard. They moved state history from 4th grade to 3rd grade, even though every other state in the United States, state history is in fourth grade. So Arizona decided to be different. And because of that, only one textbook company has responded with third grade Arizona history materials, and that's McGraw-Hill. So that also edged out Savas, which used to be called Pearson. It edged them out because they don't have anything we would be scrapping for our own Arizona history materials for third grade. So if you're buying social studies materials, you kind of want all the social studies materials, not most of the social studies materials. So that was one thing. We found that they have very good assessments. It's so whiz bang, you wouldn't even believe it. The other thing that really edged it out for McGraw-Hill is something that as soon as I say it, you're gonna go, holy cow, they sure use the COVID years wisely. Years ago, you might remember when we were adopting English language arts and math, one of the things that the vendors asked us and that the board asked me is why aren't we considering ebooks? And my answer was pretty simple. And remember, this was, long before COVID ever was a thing, right? And I said over half our students don't have internet access at home, nor do they have devices that are appropriate for reading on. Like a phone, you can't read a textbook on a phone, right? So you may have problems like that big and, so at that time, because a student had to be online to use the books, and because the cost is similar for print materials or ebooks, we decided that we would go with print materials. Well, two interesting things have happened over the course of time. One is K-8, almost every textbook is consumable now. That forces districts into an adoption cycle because textbook companies realized if they're hardback, districts hold on to them for a long time. Our high school social studies books were 30 years old when we replaced them. The world has somehow ground to a halt at like Vietnam or something, with one of the Bush presidents. And so, but now they've made them consumable, K-8, which basically forces you, right, we buy like 6-year, 7-year, 8-year subscriptions, basically, of the consumables. But McGraw-Hill noticed that people were rejecting ebooks because of that, students not having access at home. And during the COVID time, they developed a product to be used offline. So a student can be on campus, log into the system through their single sign-on that we use through a process called Clever. They log in, the teacher has clicked and assigned, let's say, a chapter, an assignment, or whatever. It can be downloaded while the student's signed in through our system here onto their device, used offline at home. Game changer.
Yeah.
So for those reasons, we're recommending, and nobody else is offering that yet. I'm sure they'll all be scrambling in development, but that is a phenomenal game changer for our kids and families because with our device deployment during COVID, we deployed devices and internet access to 45% of our school district. And so nothing's really changed, right? They turned in their devices. The other thing is now that we've used our stimulus money, we're almost 1-to-1. In fact, we exceeded on some campuses with devices for students. So the other thing is students can transition back and forth between print materials, and we'll buy some, presumably. That will be part of our recommendation for students who need to have it in their hands. They're the kind of learner that needs to turn a page, feel the text, not read it on an e-reader. Because like I only read exclusively on my phone now, but every now and then I like to have a real book in my hands. And so some kids learn better when that real book is in their hands. So we'll buy some. But the other thing is all of the assessments, all of the activities that they can do mimic the way they're assessed by the state. So when we have state assessment results now, it's hard to discern. Does a kid really not know the content? Or are they just not that great at using the computer? Because a kid can play a game on a phone or on a PlayStation doesn't mean they're technologically advanced enough to effectively do an assessment. So all of the assignments, all of the assessments have been written in a way to mimic exactly how state assessments are written. So teachers will be able to go back and forth between print materials and electronic materials, start to remove that barrier of the like smoothness with technology, right? If a kid is fluid with, let's say you have to prove, like, answer a question and drag the sentence from this story to the answer box. Well, don't you want a kid to practice that? And you don't want practice to be in isolation. You want it to become a natural part of how they learn and how they show what they've learned. So that's another huge development and game changers in textbooks. So we really felt, after sitting through a lot of presentations, and really digging into it on our own, they sent us tons of backup materials that we feel very confident on the recommendation of both Dr. Moody and Ms. Cox, that they would like to exclusively have their teachers preview McGraw-Hill for all of the reasons I've expressed. McGraw-Hill's product is really set apart for many reasons. Those are a few of them. And so the first one that we're recommending is Impact Social Studies for K-5. We've adopted social studies at the middle school and high school. We hadn't adopted it in K-5. We knew we were gonna start making some transitions in leadership and things like that. So that's the long and a little bit short of why we're only doing one and why there are any materials on display. I'd be happy to entertain questions about that. I'm sure Mr. Fogel will be endlessly fascinated by the access. And so the other thing you need to know is, if, you know, as soon as we pull the plug on this, so we're hoping to start as early as next Monday, having the teachers use the materials. McGraw-Hill is setting up a QR code for us that can go home with students. Parents can scan the code, have access to the materials online, and we'll have links on the website too, to make so people don't just have to come in to preview materials, but they'll be able to do it in a very user-friendly fashion with the QR code in our newsletters.
Can I ask a related question? You mentioned the fact that we still have a lot of our laptops out with the areas of people that don't have.
We recalled them all.
Oh, they're all that, okay. How are we gonna deal with in the areas that don't have internet access or computers at home?
So with the purchase of, if we decide to go whatever route we decide to go, purchasing some consumables still allows things to be sent home.
Okay.
And
So we'll get enough consumables for the kids, the families that do not have internet access.
And we'll also be receiving still some devices. People could, remember we had that survey people could do and would be eligible for devices.
Right.
And so there are devices still coming that will be like a permanent loan to families as well. We have
Oh,
quite a
that's
few
cool.
families take advantage of that.
Along with a Wi-Fi device so they can access internet over the cell phones for those that have cell phone service.
But they wouldn't, with this book, like the McGraw-Hill books, they wouldn't need to, because it can be there, it can be downloaded and used offline, which is such a huge game changer.
Related question, and whether you or Cindy or John, the county school office, I've been reading, got a big bundle of money for expanding internet access, high-speed internet, quotes. And Poland was one of the designated areas, but I've heard nothing more about that. I called Sparklight once because they actually did bring in high speed to our library in Poland.
Right.
And they said, right now they have no plans for adding any more high-speed internet in our area. Does anybody know what is going on?
That actually went through the county, not the school's office. That was through Yavapai County. And that contract has been awarded not to Sparklight.
Oh,
It was a different company got the contract for it. The contract has been awarded. I don't know anything more than that.
oh, okay.
Because we don't know if they're just running like a trunk line, basically,
Yeah.
or what they're doing with it.
Yeah, because you all know as well as I do, huge areas of Poland simply have no access at all. And that explains why Sparklight gave me this rather snotty answer. Because I went to the library and like at that time I could get 30 megs downloaded home. They were getting 90 at the library. The librarian didn't know how to do that, so I showed her how to do that. And she said, well, they said, because we have cable one, she said, no, Sparklight did it. So that's why I called Sparklight. But that's interesting that they did not get the contract.
Now, my understanding is it's just north of the railroad tracks and just on the west side of the highway. So it's not all of Poland.
Yeah, well, that's where the majority of
Yeah, so it's-
families are though.
Yeah, north of the road tracks and
West of-
west of the highway.
Yeah, and that's where the biggest need is. That's where
Yeah.
we have lots and lots of 6,000 square foot lots.
Mhm.
So, okay, I was just curious to see if there's any linkage between the technology McGraw Hill is using and the ability of our kids in underserved areas to have access. So,
And that's why the draw about the offline was huge.
yeah,
So, because we have kids that have phones that really don't have cellular service. They only use them to access our Wi-Fi on campus.
uh-huh.
And that would allow them to download and I had them run it for us. The downloads are mobile friendly. It's not, sometimes you use a website, it's not a mobile friendly thing, so it's like all crazy in how you're trying to read it. These are actually developed to be mobile friendly. So they have an app as well. So through the offline download, they log in here, download it on our system, and then could access it offline and mobile.
Yeah, then you can take it with you when you go home.
Correct.
Right. That's super.
Yeah, so anyway, so that's about the social studies and that's K5. And so the print copies are out in the hallway.
Any other questions? No? This is just information and discussion item, and so we'll move on to item 10D, science materials pilot and materials preview. Ms. Daniels.
So science is actually K8. We did not adopt science before. This series is called Inspire. It's also in the hallway. Same situation, same reasons with McGraw Hill. Actually found their product to be superior in lots of ways compared to the other vendors that we looked at. When we adopted high school science a couple of years ago, we did not include the middle school. As you might remember, the next generation science standards were just being released. And Arizona has put a fairly unique spin on the NGSS. And so there was a lag in what the vendors were being able to offer. So one of the most unique things, so K5, it's typical science topical, but it is modular. So it can be rearranged to grade levels because textbook companies print books, not just for Arizona, right? They print them for everywhere. And I'd like to clarify something as well. Some of you are aware that 2 states do statewide textbook adoptions. One of them is California and one of them is Texas. And because I know the sensitivities in our community may not hold the same values as much of the state of California holds, I did inquire, they have unique California editions. Arizona editions are labeled Arizona edition, far more closely aligned to Texas, but fit how Arizona's rearranged the standards to some grade levels. Standards are still the standards, there's not all the same place. So the middle school is actually 12 modules. So when we look at middle school science materials, those modules can be placed, like a module that another state might be doing in 8th grade, maybe Arizona has in 6th grade. So every kid and every science teacher has access to every module. They just assign the modules to the grade levels that coincide with how Arizona has them arranged, which is important because of state science testing, right? You got to have the right stuff the right year. So a textbook itself would not be efficient that way, but the module system is. And then, of course, they have pre-made kits for all the manipulatives, everything you need to do the experiments. But they also have lists. So we could, when we get to that point, we'll make a decision about, are we buying the kits? They'll ship every year. Or are we going to try to figure out how to find 3,500 rubber bouncing balls ourselves or whatever, So. Anyway, that's sort of the long and short of it. It was the science. They both were so impressive. It was unbelievable. Things that, and Mrs. Reeder and I were talking, when I started my career, I spent hours like at the U of A library, Bookman's, used bookstore, historical society, gathering, like I would make copies of artwork on just transparencies to put on the overhead, or to buy an album at Bookman's so my students could hear music from the era, or do all these things. And now all of these materials, there are like clicks to hyperlinks of zillions of videos about the historical videos, primary source documents, all the stuff that you had to like spend hours going to look for. She was like, what a game changer. But I would tell you something to that end that we both turned to each other and commented on after we were done with our meetings was because so many teachers are coming to this industry underprepared in their knowledge of content or their skill of pedagogy. These books make it easy. All right there.
That's good.
So it was really cool. So I wanted to share with you some of that, and so you'll have an opportunity to look at the materials, of course, electronically or in the hallway, but they're all sitting out there already. So that's what you needed to know.
Thank you. Any other questions? 11A. First reading of revised policies.
So this is the first reading. It's for discussion and review only. At the next board meeting will be the approval. It's long because this is basically the changes in our district policy based on the changes in the legislative session. So that's why these are so long. And just a couple things, student surveys, if you look in the policy, there's now 13 categories of surveys that we need to get parent permission for. And there are things like gun or ammunition ownership, income or financial information, medical history, political affiliation. So there's 13 categories of surveys that we cannot ask about. And so all of these were reviewed in our last district leadership team. And so on what needs to get communicated to our staff, these 13 surveys, really any survey you should run past your administrator, that kind of thing. Visitors to schools, not that big a deal. Parental involvement in education. Parents have access to their student records, which has always been the case. The big deal now is most of our administrators keep a personal notes that to help them, remind them what took place during an interaction with this kid or a parent or whatever. Those in the past with FERPA, those are exempt from the requirements. With Arizona, parents can actually request administrators' notes now, as long as it pertains to their child. So that's the big difference there. The immunizations, big thing is we can't require COVID vaccinations. There's some COVID stuff in here. The district cannot, no state entity can require COVID vaccinations, and no state entity can require masks. That's the two big takeaways from that. The hazing is now a criminal offense, or more of a criminal offense than it was. So they're taking that seriously, which is a good thing. Intramural sports is interesting.
We're just reading that.
Basically, if a sport is labeled as a girl sport, boys can't play. Or a boys team. If a team is labeled as a boys team, girls can play. Or if it's co-ed, both can play. So the only intramural that we have is our youth basketball team league. And so there may be, especially with the younger kids, we may have some co-ed teams that we have to make sure and specify that they're co-ed. Other than that, basically, it's your birth gender that is the key here, or the thing here. The legislature requires you to participate in the team that you have your birth gender. It's all the same for intramural, but that is defined, or those rules are really defined and taken to us through the AIA. So the AIA has to deal with that. We still have to follow them, obviously, but the AIA is the one that's going to really enforce that. So that is the intramural and sports and interscholastic sports. Transportation, not a big deal. The library materials selection and adoption. And then there's resource centers, media centers, blah, blah, blah. That has some significant rules. Any books that are purchased need to be on review after the purchase for 60 days. Parents need to have access to what books their kids check out. There are a couple exceptions to that. One is if the school library belongs to a county library network, like our high school belongs to Yavapai Library Network, our stacks of books can be checked out by anyone in the county through the YLN. And then our students at the high school can check out any book in the county through any county library that belongs to YLN through our library. Because we belong to that, we don't have to follow these rules. The other exception is if you do not have a library media specialist that runs the library. That is a specific certification. All of our libraries are staffed with paraprofessionals that don't have that certification, so we are not subject to those rules because of that. And I want you to know that a lobbyist that we work with put in those exceptions, knowing how it would impact us. So we worked, our lobbyists worked hard to get those exceptions in. School ceremonies and observances just is, has to do with Native American graduates can wear their native regalia. And then teaching about controversial, sensitive issues, you can imagine what that's about. So you just have to be careful with that. So these are, again, changes that were part of state law. We have gone through them with our leadership team so that we can communicate. There's been some big concerns. There was part of the parent involvement in education. There was at one time saying that if a child confided in a teacher something, that potentially that teacher had to share that with the parent. That is no longer in the law. But we have some teachers that were rightly so concerned about that requirement, because then it, the parent can complain and sue and sue the teacher and sue the school and the district and everything else. So that requirement was taken out. So questions, concerns, comments on any of these? And we'll have a discussion next time in October, but.
And the SBA has already drafted up all the language.
This is the ASBA language. So the ASBA takes the laws, which were, what the session ended the June 24th, and they have their attorneys laws and put them, most of these are actually changes to existing policies, so tweaks. The changes are underlined, the removals are struck out. There are some new, and it's labeled as new on here, that are completely new. But for the most part, it's tweaks to existing policies.
Any other questions? No? Okay, with that, the meeting is adjourned.
Woohoo.
Thank you.
Just like that.
Just like that.
6:22.
Don't leave me. She's PE teacher too. Computer, I just-
Thank you.